Así que les pido un fuerte aplauso para Germán y que nos va a contar un poquito de IBM Watson y su interacción con Salesforce.
Buenísimo. Gracias, Aldo. So I'm going to make my talk in English because I know that a few of you here are not Spanish speakers, but I should tell you up front that I'm originally from Uruguay, so I speak Spanish. So if you have questions you want to ask in Spanish, that's good for me. I can try to, we can do it in that way, and I can switch and clarify something in Spanish as needed, okay? So there's plenty of room to sit, so those who are standing, please take your space, and let's do this in the best way that will be helpful for everybody. So Fernando called me, and good old friend, have a lot of interesting stories to tell if you know him, but too bad he's not here, else I don't feel I can tell them because he's not being here, right? He wouldn't be able to. We won't be able to laugh when he's not here. But I'm going to talk today about Watson, primarily from IBM, our AI for business platform, and also in this context, how we have been integrating it into Salesforce, and we have also now SDK that was created to help developers that are using, that are developing Salesforce to use Watson services very well. Now, before everybody else, as everybody else that has done this, all these disclaimers, all the legalese, everybody knows that, so no commitments on anything, blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about there are basically 3 or 4 things that I want to talk about today. And one thing I'd like to say up front is that my colleague Manuel, I don't see him here, Manuel, but he's still outside. He's doing demos, he's answering questions, and he also lives here in Montevideo. And any of you who are close by can come and hear much more about this for as long as you want with him and the team. But I want to start with something that Aldo mentioned, which is the partnership between Salesforce and IBM, and then talk more about the platform, the Watson platform, and what it does and what it could do for you. And then talk about how we put together Watson and Einstein. And finally, the SDK. I will not have a lot of time to get through the details, but like every other SDK that you can relate to, it helps you integrate, it does a lot of things for you that you haven't had to do before. But I can show you where it is and how to use it. Okay? All right, so let's start with the partnership. So you can recognize probably the beard guy, but I don't know if you recognize the lady. So anybody recognize her? No? That's the CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty, my boss's boss's boss. And they got together and they announced a few things that IBM and Salesforce will jointly deliver solutions that will leverage artificial intelligence, okay? So certainly, Salesforce has a lot of strengths, and I'm not going to bore you telling you the things that you know about Salesforce. IBM brings to the table some things, and that was the main reason I think Aldo and the team were looking for someone from IBM to come and tell you a little bit about it. So obviously, I'm going to focus about that. So we have a lot of great things we have been doing in AI. So the idea is to get a lot of insights from Watson, and I'll talk about what Watson is in a moment, so that it will be flowing into the Salesforce platform so that you can leverage that and combine whatever deep insights come from Einstein with Watson, both structured and unstructured data knowledge, so as to get the best of all worlds. So clearly there are things that Einstein is focusing on and is good on, but these two would not have gotten together and brought things together if they didn't think there was benefit that 1 + 1 will be much more than 2, right? So that's the message that I would like to talk about. So when do we integrate them together? Several ways. There is a whole set of Watson APIs. So Watson, it's a brand, it's a platform, it's a set of APIs, it's a bunch of services, it's a lot of things, okay? Watson, for those who may not know, was the name of our founder. IBM has been around 106, almost 107 years. And back then, we recognize him because a lot of things that he did, and some of the things that it was interesting to know from a social perspective that impacted the way we go around came from him. We were joking the other day about good old things that we have in IBM, and you maybe probably few people know the kinds of things that we do now compared with the kind of things that we go in the past. But if you go way, way back in the past, we used to do machine slicers for ham and things like that, and clocks and all kinds of things that long, long ago we don't do anymore. So it's not what you may have heard about what IBM is doing from the recent past. There is a URL here, Watson IBM/Salesforce, that tells you all you may ever want to know about the partnership that is known. So what is Watson? That's the main thing I want to focus today. So Watson, we focus on artificial intelligence for professionals, okay? So let me contrast that with artificial intelligence for consumers, okay? So perhaps if you are at home and you want something, music for the mood, then you are being a consumer. You just want something for your personal pleasure. But if you are a professional architect, a lawyer, a medical doctor, and so on and so forth, you're in business, you're doing things, this is the type of things where you need expertise and knowledge that is more professional, based on the things that you're trying to achieve, where there is a particular corpus, right? And you don't ask your medical doctor about how to fix your car, unless he happens to be both, but that's rare, right? So you need to be in the right context. So with Watson, what you can do is you can, if you are a professional, you can accelerate whatever research and discovery, trying to find out the answers to the questions that you have, enrich your interactions. You can make recommendations, like if you're a doctor, now you should be doing this procedure with much more confidence than before, and with expertise explanations of how or why. You can detect liabilities that will allow you to mitigate risk. You can anticipate and preempt disruptions. You can scale expertise, scale learning. You can do a lot of things that involve what we call now, again, methodologies that come from the domains of artificial intelligence, okay? And so you invoke them and you enrich your applications. You still have to do whatever it is that you wanted to do, but if you need to have things like some use cases that I show in a moment, you'll see the value of doing that. So I wanted to select some use cases, and if Aldo would have given me more time, I would have had beautiful use cases to show, but I chose one because I guess everybody loves puppies. In this particular case, these are puppies that are being trained to be guide dogs for blind people, right? So do you have any idea how much in the United States it costs to train a dog to become a guide dog so that it can go with a blind person, a certified guide dog? Any ideas? No. 10,000? 30,000, getting close, keep going. It takes about 2 years and about approximately $50,000. And that, for the person who needs it, that, I'm sure that if I need it, I will pay that, and all of us will do that. But there is a problem. The problem is that oftentimes these dogs, the dog guiding progress fails. And it may fail for many reasons, okay? It's a whole process that starts with, obviously, the birth of the puppies. A family adopts them, trains them for some time, then they go to school where they learn how to do things, and eventually they get more learning, and eventually they get paired with the person who's going to need them. They go some more training and so forth. And in many cases, there's a mismatch, the wrong dog to the wrong person, the wrong this, whatever it happens. So it turns out that by using combinations of two services from Watson, one called Personality Insights and the other one Natural Language Classifier, that had to do with how people relate, how the training goes, and all kinds of things that I don't know about them because I'm not a trainer of dogs. But people did this solution, and it's really helping accelerate and get better matching of dogs to the people who, the users, I guess the end users being the blind people who need the dogs. So this is a nice example. There's a beautiful movie that I could put the link there, but it almost made me cry, so I didn't want to share that experience with you. But it really is wonderful how they get into those dogs to be really there. So what does Watson do? How do we get, this is one example. Again, I had many to choose from. This is one that it has a certain social value, right? I mean, training dogs for blind people, although it may be a business too. So at the core, what does Watson do? So it takes a lot of information that comes from structured and unstructured. So most people here, I believe, know what is unstructured information. I'm not gonna, right? Unstructured, video, stock, whatever it is that is not in records with format and so forth, right? So we take both those types of information, which comes from either your particular domain, or the rest of the world, whatever information is out there that may be relevant, okay? So one example I was mentioning today with somebody was, well, we have sales records, okay? How much this store sold this day and that day, and how am I going to predict what's going to happen on that day, right? How do you do that, right? So you can, if you only look at the information that you have, it's going to be pretty hard to do very good prediction. Best example I know to share here is the weather, okay? If it rained on that day, probably you're going to get a very different pattern of sales in this particular store, in this particular place. If it's a holiday in this particular state, you're going to get different pattern of sales that if it, right? So that's augmented data that comes from weather patterns that was not available necessarily in your sales records, okay? Now, out there in the world, there's a lot of information that adds to the information that you have that may be very relevant. Watson takes all of that information and transforms it, augments it, and creates what we call insights, which means at the end, you are wiser about what's going on. Okay, better decision, better insight, things that when I explain to you, like, okay, because it rained, the sales were lower, you said, of course, when it rains, fewer people go out to buy. Makes sense. But from the original data, you wouldn't have guessed that. So it ingests, transforms the data with their APIs, optimize the data, and comes out with certain outcomes that help you get better decisions, which are reasoned, which are informed, and which may be relevant to the specific domain that is yours. For example, training dogs and whatever it is in that domain of how they relate to humans and whatever it is that they need to be, and if it's going to be a dog that's going to be going to a city or going to be to a non-urban place on this and that, is very different than training healthcare people or training for something else. So your domain is very important. The context of the domain. So how does Watson do that? How does Watson, in the sense of artificial intelligence, is doing things that help us see things, hear things, speak, understand feelings, translate things, and so forth. So we have a combination of services, and I'm going to talk about a few of them just to give you a flavor. For each of them, like this first one is visual recognition. For each of them, I could give a talk, but I wouldn't, because you probably want to go to the bar also today, right? So let's talk about visual recognition, for example. So this is, there are lots of issues on vision that you want to train things, right? So for example, for the example of the dog, maybe if it's living on the city, the dog, then he needs to recognize semaphores or different types of cross or all kinds of things that need to happen. But if you are in a different domain, different things. So there's a lot of content there of how to do recognition, but of course you have to train it with your particular domain. You care about your insurance policies, the car crashed, what happened there. You care about medicine, it's about lesions on skin. This is what makes sense, right? So you train it, and then you can use it, okay? So this improves your ability to enrich your decisions based on unstructured data that is visual. If you were looking at it, it's just a collection of pixels. The next big item is it's ready to speech, and it goes in both directions. Text to speech, sometimes people want to hear something rather than read it, and speech to text, the other direction. So somebody's saying something, like I'm doing now, and you like to understand what it said, and then you can do more intelligent things with it. For example, you can start doing language with it, because usually I will be talking in words. That, has to do with the language, and it could be translated, or it could be classified. They could relate to concepts. I may be giving a talk. I may be giving a complaint. I may be praising the work that I got. I may be complaining about it. There's a lot of information that you can gather from that. The next set of services relate to what we call empathy. And empathy has to do with the way that people are communicating. Sometimes they are saying things that indicate that they are not happy, or very unhappy, or they're okay, or whatever. Also, there may be things that relate to personality insights. We were talking with Don about the different personalities of people and how they learn, right? This applies also for the different customers. Not every way to approach a customer to answer their questions may be the right way to do it in the right context at the right time. So having some insight on the personalities that they have, and again, this is a deep topic, and I'm not a psychologist, not going to get into those details, but you can go there and understand what types of insights you can get. Then again, we'll augment your reference and will help you create better answers. The next one is conversation, and this is related to chatbot and that kind of thing. When you start having conversation service, when you want to help automate the process of engaging with the customer, there's a virtual agent content that is essentially a chatbot way to do it. Now we have had, all of these services that I'm talking about, they have been tried and executed by a lot. I don't know how to count this, but there are businesses and companies all over the world trying it and working on it in real use case scenarios daily. Okay, now I'm laughing a little bit because I remember conversations about the conversational service that I was having in a country not too far from here, where the issues were about the different accents of the different people, because they were having people coming from many different regions, and this was a public service, so anybody could call because it was, let's say, for some document that they needed, and how they express themselves, and we need to understand that, and very interesting discussions of intent and how to keep that. And finally, the one that I'm going to talk a little bit more as time allows is discovery. So discovery is about a collection of services that include natural language understanding. So this is about documents and other context that is relevant for you. You can get it in, and it may be in your world and it's available, but you don't know yet how to get insights out of it. There is a discovery services that goes around and finds things inside your own, in your firewall, in your business. There are discovery news that continuously get augmented with stuff coming from Twitter, Facebook, or whatever you want news to come into. And Knowledge Studio that helps you organize that. So these are a basic set of services that are available there. So let's take a look at what we have been doing with that. So if you look at the Watson and Cloud platform, we start from the bottom with our cloud platform that provides all the infrastructure, services, compute, containers, messaging, services like blockchain we heard before, and so on. Infrastructure services, developer services. On top of that, we have basic data handling services, right? Ingestion, enrichment, storage, analysis, and so forth. And then we start on top to get the real Watson services, which if you look at this is the list that I just gave you in the previous chart. On top of that, there are a lot of applications that have been created. So if you want to create an application to help, I don't know, maybe there will be training for cats, I don't know for what, because cats are not as good workers as dogs are, right? There's always those jokes about cat persons versus dog persons. So, but there are a lot of applications. So starting with healthcare, we are everywhere. We have a lot of work done on helping doctors in their healthcare solutions. Media, in terms of, for example, getting video content and helping you index it and help you understand what's going on and so forth. Talent relates to HR, so we have solutions on HR on how to improve your HR, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in terms of improving the results on your hiring, the retention, and so forth. And so on and so forth. Security, there's many, many solutions that we have that you can either go and buy or you can plan to build your own that use and leverage some of the underlying AI services. So here's the one I wanted to start, as time allows, briefly talk about the Watson Discovery. So in Discovery, we have a lot of content coming from the left that is unstructured data, all of the things that you have in your laptop, servers, PDF, docs, whatever. And Watson Discovery goes out and finds it, automatically ingests it, understands the different content sources, provides integrated enrichment, and then provides a simplified query language that allows you to find out if you really want on your own. So it supports natural language processing, semantic search, relevance, passage retrieval, because there are lots of elements. So you can think about many, many examples in your applications where having a service like this, where you say, well, I'm in this situation, and I know that somewhere over there must be the answer, but how am I going to find it, right? This is where Discovery comes to place and helps you find it. So here's an example. A use case, voice of the customer. In this case, we have some personas there, but basically the question is, how can I improve my product, my service, my brand, right? By reading through reviews from the customers, surveys, Twitter feeds, all kinds of information. You can get a comprehensive view, find root cause analysis of what issues are by doing the right analysis. Again, understanding the natural language implications, and then find some actionable insights that say, you should do this, you should do that in order to improve your brand or your product or whatever. Okay, so this is one use case scenario that is being, again, don't want to get into the details of, so many companies have used this to do this, but just use your imagination. Another one is document discovery, in which the issue is, how do I fix this problem, right? So somebody, you can imagine, a service agent, field technician, going there trying to fix something. How do I fix it, right? So there are manuals, there are knowledge base, there are these blogs, and what else we had? You mentioned blogs, and this, and all of that material. So Watson captures all of that in the specific corpus and context, right? So if we are talking about a machine to do coffee, it's not the same as if you're talking about programmers doing development for a particular platform, right? So in that context, there are certain words that may mean certain things and so forth. Okay? This helps improve productivity, consistency, and so forth. So this is where I move to the next step, which is how do we combine Einstein and Watson. And this is one particular case in which you already have an Einstein chatbot who is doing whatever an Einstein chatbot is good at doing with the CRM data. And at some points, you could say, well, I need to have a confidence threshold whether to decide to do this or that. How would I know that? So this is something that you will pass on to Watson. There are some patterns that I want to find out. So these are the kind of examples that people have already used in order to do the right transfer. So in this particular case, Watson Discovery will be able to provide information that was not known inside the Salesforce context that will be still very relevant to provide the right answer to the for the chatbot, right? See, you don't want to be in a situation in which the chatbot just says, well, I don't know. And then the client asks again and again, right? So this gives you a little bit of an escape of trying to find some other things, the long tail of information that could be relevant. There's the tone analyzer. So from the chatbot, you can sometimes, the chatbot is finding a little bit of clues for the answer. But what's really the person saying here, right? What's the tone? What does it mean? Is it complaining? Is it trying to? Because depending on that, right, you may want to pursue different strategies on how to answer. And finally, personality insights. If you have an idea that this customer prefers to be told certain things in certain fashion versus another fashion, then that could be a very valuable thing to know and use. So these are the kind of examples of where you will pass the information to Watson and ask Watson to help you from inside an Einstein interaction. And speech to text also. There may be, I guess, I'm not familiar so much with how Einstein does speech to text, but I understand that Watson is being used in that context too. Second example, voice of the customer. Here, this is about empowering the users to understand what their customers are saying, providing actionable insights. Again, discovery, getting a lot of information from many other sources that are outside the Salesforce data. So you still have an interaction through Einstein, but you're trying to understand from the customer a lot of things that are coming from outside. Then there's something called Knowledge Studio, which is a way to organize all of this data and get insights, and speech to text again for capturing the questions from a speech and getting them, and to analyze it also. Recommend next best action. What's the next best thing to do? At some point, I'm thinking of a sort of interaction with a customer, and at some point they're complaining, and maybe you offering them a discount is the right thing to do, or the expected thing to do, or whatever, right? So selecting the best next best action based on natural language understanding, domain knowledge, and intent classification. So now we're going to the next, so these were just 3 use cases. Again, there are many, many more. But there is a Salesforce, Watson Salesforce SDK, which is basically what you expect an SDK to be. It is in order to integrate Watson AI into Salesforce applications quickly and very friendly way. You should be able to use it as a developer to provide us access to assets. So how do I get into this? Here's the 2-3 lines of code that show you how to do it. You send this, you get that. They parse the JSON for you, they return an object. They have all these beautiful properties. It's all available in GitHub. And should you use it? Yes, of course. It give you information that you need. If you want to go the painful way of making it all up again, you could do that. And I guess if I were you, I would just go to GitHub and pull it off and see how we did it, okay? And let me quote Mark on this. He said in Twitter for everybody to see that this SDK, incredible integration between AI and customer data. So he liked it. So I think we can think that it has something on it. So what does it provide, right? Bottom line. A set of libraries for all those services that I listed, okay? So there may be more coming up, but all of those that I named already are already available. So you can use them today. It has a lot of classes that are pre-built that help you, we have seen all these scenarios. You don't need to do this to pass all of the information, to find this in this paragraph. We have classes that help you to do this. The header methods that make things very simple. API responses come back as objects, so you don't need to do the JSON parsing. We have examples, testing examples. So you can test your code and see what it does well. We had assertions for unit testing, so you can validate that things are working. And it is a package on GitHub. So you can deploy it manually in Salesforce DX through End, or whatever what Salesforce DX does. And there's a deploy to SFDX, which I believe this is the Lightning version, right? The SFDX, yeah, okay. So that's, there's a button, you say this, and it gets deployed. and that's it. Here are the references. I guess I will put them somewhere available. First is the SDK. The announcement that tells you all you want to know about it. Again, this was late 2017. And the business value, a story that explains how you can make many of these use cases and even more that make value to your use. Now, if you'd like to know more about all of this, and you happen to be passing by Montevideo or live there or whatever, my friends in this team, Sebastián, Gabi, Manuel, who's here, and many others, will be very happy to host you at their location in Pablo de María 1220. They have a very friendly place and environment where you can sit down and talk use cases and go through the design and do some coding and whatever will be friendly to help you get there. We found that sometimes it just takes hand-holding the first few steps, and then next thing you know, some people will just want to be on their own and do it on their own. Some people like the coffee and the cookies, I don't know. All of those are good reasons, or they want to socialize, that's fine too. Very friendly team. You can see, Manuel is not here. He's manning the booth, so he just can't stay away from that. But he's just across and giving demos. So we have a community of developers for IBM that is, you can join very easily. And there's a lot of content, in particular Manuel, who has been contributing to some of the chatbots, asked me to do a little advertising for that. And I'm being told one, which I think means that this is great, because now is the time to ask questions. The Q&A, we are on time. Now, I can't see you, so you have to
We have
shout.
one here, wasn't here.
We have a question here.
It wasn't clear for me the use case for the dog for blinded people. Where is the input and where is the output for a specific?
Okay, you want to see the movie? It's very really sweet. So the organization. So look at it from the organization. I'm the organization, let's say, and I'm responsible for getting dogs to successfully serve, guide the patients which are blind people, right? So if I get a dog to a person, I invest 2 years of training, and at the end, they say, the person said, this is not a good dog for me, I failed, right? If I get the dog, go through the process, and the person gives me 5 stars in the Uber or whatever, they're happy, that was great, right? So the reality is that of every 100 dogs that I put in, about a lot get rejected. It didn't work. It just didn't work, okay? Now, the question is, how do you reduce that reject, okay? Hopefully very early, because it could be, you're under several steps, right? So maybe it could be that this type of dog, this is it's not a good match for this type of situation. Maybe there are families that train the dogs for some time at the beginning, right? So there's a lot of information that's being collected, step by step during the process, that tells you, you get the dog. I mean, you start with the parents of the dog. Maybe there's the DNA of the dog. It was, there was the dog that was not going to be friendly, and all their siblings are not good. I don't know. Whatever the root causes, the causes of why there was a mismatch may vary, right? You also want to learn about the patient. Maybe the dog is fine, but the patient is very peculiar and needs a dog that is more, I don't know what. But early in the process, they know who is going to be the candidate, right? So they are doing things for them. So So you're spending $50,000, 2 years of process, and you're having some rejects, right? You want to improve that. Did I answer your question more or less? So there's a lot of information is being collected all the time. Watson is helping analyze it. There's a lot of structure and structured information. I mean, there are videos about how the dog fetches something, right? Maybe this dog is, is not gentle enough. I don't know. All kinds of things that are appropriate for that domain. And it's just one domain. Again, I choose that domain not because it's the best domain, but because it was a, it was a sweet domain that everybody can relate to it, right? Rather than saying insurance or healthcare or, something like that will be very, then we can go much more specific about how it's being done because there is knowledge, right? If it's healthcare, we are studying articles in the literature and results and tests and this and that, so it's much more the constraints. Now, what is it that makes a dog a good fit to a person? I'm not an expert on that, so.
Okay, thanks everyone. Germán, we are running out of time, so send a big applause for Germán Goldszmidt.